Hello, friends. Welcome to this week's 30-Minute Thursdays, otherwise known as 30 Mint, where I bring you my weekly dose of fresh ideas and insights that are helping me to perform at my best. For my favorite recovery hacks, training philosophies, and analyzed guest insights, I will come prepared each week in hopes that you can apply these snippets to your everyday life. Make sure to check out the website, www.mainideapodcast.com. Join the mailing list and stay up to date with all things the Main Idea Podcast. By joining the community, you'll have access to Ask Me Anythings, products that I'm loving, future events, community-only merchandise, and opportunities to support the show. Now let's get to it. If you like it, please subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes. And for the true fans, leave a 5-star review on Spotify. Today, I'm going to be breaking down core strength in its entirety. In this episode, you can expect to hear my opinions on the, quote, core and its functions, muscles that are involved in the core, sport application, best exercises, and my current training regimen. I hope you enjoy the show. So let me start with a very brief PSA. If you are human, you have abdominal muscles. If you can't see them, it's because there's too much adipose tissue or fat tissue between the muscle and the epidermis, which is a skin layer. In layman terms, there's too much fat covering them. This is a product of three things: poor dietary habits, lack of sleep or quality sleep, and insufficient exercise, in that order. With that in mind, let's begin to unpack what exactly the core is. It's such a hot word in terms of muscle and strength training. It's something that is thrown around a lot, so I think it's best that we just define it. We define it in its entirety, and then we talk about exactly how to use it and where it's best applied. So when people talk about the core, what I think that they mean is the group of muscles below the neck, below the chest, above the waistline, and including the back. That's a very simple assumption. What I like to think of it as is a coil between our pelvis and our neck. And it has a couple different functions. The main functions of the core are to fight gravity. So this keeps us upright. Fight hyperextension in the back. Fighting hyperflexion, which is falling forward, and resisting the forces of rotation. That part is especially important when it comes to sport. You can think about football players, hockey players, basketball players, skiers, anyone that has the opportunity to come in contact with another object, another person, or pivot and rotate or shift, change direction. Those core muscles are going to help reduce this force and allow the body to perform the way that it wants to, when it wants to, with stability and power. By functioning in these different capacities, the core provides us with stability. So it allows our trunk, this midsection of our body, to be stable while our limbs do what they want. So if you are very basically standing in your kitchen and reaching up to a jar that's on a very top shelf, and you're reaching and reaching, and you're on your tiptoes and you grab it, you want your core to be able to stabilize your trunk so that you can bring that thing back down safely. If you lose your balance, if you slip, if you have a lack of stability, you're going to drop the jar. That's a very simple version of this. In sport, if you are running as fast as you can forward and you stop and try to change directions and go the other way, you want your core muscles to stabilize your midsection as your lower body does what it wants, makes these quick movements, and generates power in a new direction. So it plays a big role in stability. In strength training, the core muscle group is of the utmost importance because it is the foundation with which you can load weight on top of. If your core muscles are generally weak, you're going to have a very tough time safely building strength into your squat. If your core muscles are weak or lack stability, you're going to have a very tough time increasing real weight in, for example, your deadlift. If your core muscles are weak or lack stability and you hold on to dumbbells and do a step up or a reverse lunge or a side lunge, that lack of stability is going to show up somewhere, and it's going to make it more difficult for you to perform that exercise at your capabilities. If your core muscles are weak and you cannot break and you lack stability, it is going to be very tough for you to generate power. If you think of power movements like in sport, golf swings, linemen going off the line at the snap of a football, baseball swings, anything that's as explosive as possible. A baseball swing is a great example. As the player winds up into their backswing, their core muscles tighten, create this rotational force, and the kinetic sequence finishes when they make contact with the ball. And depending on how powerful of an athlete they are and how much they can utilize that power through stability in their core, they're going to hit that ball really far. The power is coming from the hips, the stability is coming from the core muscles, and the bat is the crack of the whip that's going to send that ball into the outfield or the stands. So stability, bracing, and power generation are all functions of a core that's properly built, that's been structured in the right way as to allow the athlete, allow the individual to perform how they want, when they want, where they want. So if we look at the core, people typically think of these six-pack muscles, your rectus abdominis. These are the ones that are visible when people have a low body fat percentage. They are part of our anatomical structure. Everybody has a rectus abdominis. So as I stated in the beginning, if they're not showing, it's a result of too much adipose tissue between the muscle and the skin. If they are showing, it means the body fat percentage is low enough that the muscles can appear through the skin. Everyone has them, but that's typically what people think of when they think of core. As a result, a lot of the exercises that people reach for are rectus abdominis building exercises, like crunches, reverse crunches, sit-ups. These exercises do have purpose, and I think with the growth of, quote, functional fitness, they have fallen by the wayside to some degree for good reason, but it doesn't mean they should be eliminated entirely, because like I said in the beginning, reducing excessive flexion is a good thing. And if those muscles are tight, they can help prevent that. But you need it on both ends. You have to have stability and strength behind yourself in your low back muscles and on the front to keep you upright. So I'm just going to name these off. If the anatomy of the body is not of interest to you, or you have no care for which these are, just skip this section. But the muscles in your core, your rectus abdominis, your transverse abdominis, which is your very deep group of core muscles that help support the lumbar spine. I'll talk about those in a little bit. Internal and external obliques. Those are the striations on the side of the body. Your erectors, which are between your waist and like your mid-low back. Those are typically where people point to when they say that they feel pain in their lumbar. They point to their erectors, but it's not necessarily the erectors that are the cause of that pain. Typically, it's actually the transverse abdominis. Your quadratus lumborum, people also call this their QL. It's kind of where the love handles would be. Psoas major and minor. This plays a huge role in back pain reduction, because the psoas is the one muscle that attaches the lumbar spine to the front of the pelvis, and it's very superficial to the skin, so if there's an issue with it, it's extremely tough to get to. There's a lot of people that claim that they can reduce or release the psoas, but if you've actually had a psoas release done by a professional, you realize how complicated and time-taking this is. It takes a long time to penetrate the abdominal wall and get a hold of that muscle so that you can cause a release. But that release can seriously reduce the pain that people feel in their lumbar, because like a tight rope, it's getting loosened and allowing more space in the joint. Next would be your iliacus on the side of the pelvis. So if you look at these muscles from the superficial level all the way deep to the internal level around the lumbar, they have to be trained in a bunch of different ways. You can't just do sit-ups to get a strong core. How do you target your transverse abdominis if it's so deep? That's where we look to gymnastics. Things like the hollow hold are so efficient at training these deep core muscles in isometric tension without flexion or extension, and giving support to that part of the body where it needs it most. One of the biggest things that I did for my body when I came out of high school after having an extensive career as a skier, falling out of the sky, tough landings, long days skiing moguls. If you're not familiar with it, it is probably one of the toughest sports on your back when it comes to winter sports. I had a really tight psoas. I walked, quote, like an 80-year-old man, according to my physical therapist, and I had excessive back pain. The very first thing that I did when I became knowledgeable of training principles, and training for sport was begin to train the transverse abdominis and put real strength around that part of the lumbar. I've used this example before, rubber bands wrapped around a toothpick. It applies yet again to this part of the body. If you think of your lumbar spine, although the vertebrae are thick, it's like a toothpick. And if the transverse abdominis, the rubber band wrapped around that, isn't sufficient, it's not going to provide a lot of stability to that part of the body where it needs it most. Unlike your thoracic, you don't want a mobile lumbar. You want a stable lumbar. And a stable lumbar is the result of deep strength in your transverse abdominis, then supported as you go further out on the layers of the onion until you get to the outside of the body. So that part of the episode's a little dense. That's a lot of jargon and actual names of the muscles, and it gets a little into the weeds. But I want to paint that picture of how complex this system is, and also touch on the fact that that is the tip of the iceberg. In reality, when you look at sport, no part of the body is acting by itself. There is no time when a football player is using just their bicep. There is no time when a baseball player is only using their hips. And as a result, any sport you do, anything that you do, from surfing to grappling to skiing to pickleball, your whole body is operating as a unit all the time. And if parts of that unit are weak, that is going to be expressed in the sport in either A, poor mechanics, or B, risk of injury. So to build a, quote, strong core is much more complex than just doing sit-ups. The challenge is, what do you actually do to build a strong core? And how do you know when you have one? And I'll answer that in this section after the next. But I'd like to talk first about sport application. My hope with this section is that leaning on some of these applications will incentivize you to take some time to look at your training regimen, or if you don't have one, begin to establish one, and ask yourself, how can I fit core training into this that actually makes sense, that supports the other things that I'm doing and has an in-sport payout or an in-life payout versus just doing a bunch of sit-ups to grow a muscle that's hidden behind fat tissue. You see people do this all the time. They try to get abs by just doing sit-ups. The old adage, abs are built in the kitchen, is partially true. They're also built during sleep, and they're also built during training. But it's these three things together that come to show the muscle or to gain that aesthetic. It involves good nutrition, certainly. You have to be eating the right amount of food and making good choices. But you have to have the right output of exercise so that you're expelling more calories through activity. And then you have to rest to allow your body to recover, to build bigger muscles, to increase your active metabolic rate and your metabolism. So if you're burning more calories at rest, that's the result of having more muscle on the body, and that downline is going to have a payout of reducing body fat percentage, increasing composition, and now you might have the muscle showing. It's not going to be built by just doing a bunch of sit-ups until your abs burn. You're just going to create hypertrophy and inflammation in the rectus abdominis, but it's still hidden by the body tissue. So you're actually going to just create a sensation of bloating. So you got to hammer nutrition, you got to hammer sleep if it really matters to you to have that aesthetic payout. So let's talk about sport application. I'm going to talk about the three sports that I know well. And although these three examples are very crystal clear in their use of core strength and stability, it doesn't mean that this is only true for these sports. I just do my best to talk about the things that I know and leave out the things that I don't. So if we look at grappling, the biggest representation of core strength in grappling is balance. If your opponent pushes you, do you spin? Do you fall? Do you lose balance? Or do you stabilize and maintain your position? If you're hand fighting and they drive your hand off and go for an arm drag and you yank back, do you yank back and slip and pull yourself over? Part of that might be due to skill set and technique, but part of it's due to balance and core stability. If someone shoves you in your shoulder and you rotate, can you get back to baseline as quick as possible? Do your core muscles want to find neutrality, or are they okay being spread apart, pulled, pushed, and prodded? If you lack stability in the muscles, and if they are not used to finding homeostasis, to engaging and bringing everything back to the midline, then it's going to be tough to find your balance, whatever position you're in, whether it's stand-up, whether it's hand fighting, whether it's wrestling exchanges, scrambles, or if you're trying to maintain top position. I tend to use a lot of knee on belly as a top position because I feel in control there. If someone bridges wildly, I can float the position because I know my core stability is going to keep my legs close to the body, and I'm going to let their energy waste against my stability until they get tired, and then I can advance the position. So in grappling, your core strength and core stability allows you to stay tighter to the position that you're choosing to be in, And in the event that something happens, like a scramble, it allows you to find your center quicker. You can challenge this in many ways, making sure that the exercises that you're doing are paying out. You can close your eyes and see if that changes your balance and your stability. The other benefit in grappling would be literal resistance against your opponent. So if you're on the bottom and someone throws knee on belly into your stomach, if you have no core strength, you can't resist that. And you don't have to resist it for 5 minutes, but you need to resist it long enough to get the ankle out of the way, drive the knee, hip out, and then regain your guard. So this position, core strength, rigidity in the abdominal muscles, does allow you to breathe behind the shield, so to speak, which is to breathe behind the tension and buy time to make a decision to advance the position. That's where it pays out in grappling tenfold. In sweeps, when your opponent goes to sweep you, if you are not completely locked in poor technique and they're just outclassing you in technical ability, your ability to not get swept and regain your position is going to be a function of how well you can stabilize your trunk and get your limbs to do what you want to do. So in grappling, the opportunity to use developed core strength, stability, and power are endless, which is why it behooves anyone who is anyone who is training jiu-jitsu or training grappling, gi or no gi, to invest time in doing core exercises that actually matter. And they don't have to look like jiu-jitsu. Dante Leone and I had a great conversation about this, about how to make sure strength is applicable. A core exercise doesn't have to look like jiu-jitsu for it to benefit jiu-jitsu. A core exercise can have the sole purpose of strengthening the muscles in your core, or developing more mass in the muscles in your core, or developing power and stability in the muscles in your core to then transition. So doing something like a weighted plank with good arm position, locked out quads, and tight feet might actually have a benefit in jiu-jitsu, because you are going to build isometric tension in your core muscles so that when you get flipped to your back and someone throws a knee on your belly, you're able to resist that. In snow sports, the utilization of core stability is endless, because in essence, winter sports are stabilizing your trunk and letting your legs move freely. I spent 12 years as a mogul skier. That is mogul skiing through and through. Watch any mogul skier fly down the hill in the Olympics, in the World Cup, in the North American circuit at a regional level. You are scored on how silent your body is from your waist to the top of your head, while your legs are literally functioning like pistons, rolling over the top of the mogul, creating an edge, driving into the trough, and coming up over the next mogul. Like pistons, they're firing up and down constantly while maintaining a still upper body. It's one of the most dynamic examples and crystal clear examples of core strength in action in a speed-based, power-based sport. So, skiing, for anyone who's ever been on snow, it's a slippery surface. You're dealing with friction. You're dealing with changes in condition, which result in changes in speed and changes in forces acting against the body as it goes down the hill. If you can stabilize your midsection, you allow your legs to do what they want when you want them to. If your core lacks stability, any adjustment in snow conditions, speed, pitch, or friction will have a result in moving the legs in some direction. And if you can't maintain the legs close to the midline in your position, or if you're on a snowboard, you start to wash out one of your edges and you can't get back to that position, core instability will result in legs doing what they want, and you will most likely fall, slip, wash out, or lose control of your speed. When we look to surfing, power through a bottom turn in surfing is generated by stability in the core, which allows the hips and the hamstrings and the quads to do what they want, to act against the board, to create down pressure, and adjust the fins in the water so that you can generate speed. If you watch someone with a weak core try to make an aggressive bottom turn, they will wash out and fall. If you watch some of the best surfers in the world, they are showing you a mix of incredible technique and skill that is much more difficult than what meets the eye, combined with excellent core stability that stabilizes their midsection and allows their limbs to do what they want. As they come up the wave, they draw with their arms the arc that they're going to follow, because their trunk's stable and they can do something with their arms without it costing them their stability or their balance and falling on the wave. The more powerful the thing that they do, the more force is acting against them, the more that trunk stability matters to allow the legs to do what they want. So if you're making a bottom turn, you're coming up the top and whacking the top of the wave and creating a bunch of spray, all that speed that you generated in the bottom turn, along the wave, along the high line, and now all peaking at this pinnacle moment, is acting against you at the same time that you're acting into the wave. So if you don't have stability in your core muscles, front, back, side, internal, superficial, you're going to fall. You're going to wash out. You're going to lose your board, whatever it is. So again, investing in stability of your core, investing in strength in your core will have a crystal clear payout that you will feel every single day that you surf. So if we look to best exercises for the core, I'm just going to give you 5. And I'm going to rattle them off because I knew this episode was going to be dense and I want to get to a little bit of what I'm doing, as I promised in the beginning. So hollow holds, look this up. I will link every single one of these exercises in the show notes. Sorry, there's 6 of them. Hollow holds originate in gymnastics, lying flat on your back, legs at 45 degrees, pinning your low back to the ground like someone has a rag underneath your back and they're trying to pull it away from you. This will fire those really deep internal transverse abdominis muscles that support your lumbar. I have almost every single client, including myself, do these on a weekly basis because they matter for giving stability to your low back. Farmer's carries, very simple. They are what they sound like, holding weights at your side and walking along an imaginary line, heel to toe so that you're on an imaginary tightrope. This creates instability in and of itself, and your core muscles have to stabilize against the weight because they will sway with every step you take. If you want to challenge that, hold one weight on one side and do the same thing. You'll feel the opposite side of your core muscles bulge out, but stick with it and keep everything really tight. The heavier you go, the more you're going to feel this in your core. Hanging leg raises, incredible for jiu-jitsu, incredible for grappling because they involve grip strength and abdominal strength and hip flexion, which is constantly present in jiu-jitsu. If your hip flexors are weak, you're going to experience pain and you're going to have to take time off because that's guard retention all day. Payoff presses, perhaps one of my most favorite exercises because they have endless variations, very applicable to sport, and they are extremely good at building anti-rotational core strength. It doesn't take very much weight to build this proficiency, but you can endlessly progress it. You can add moving resistance, you can increase the resistance, you can change your footprint, you can change your handprint, you can do single arm, you can press at angles. They are so useful and you can constantly increase in different ways. So Palloff presses, ride or die, best anti-rotational strength exercise. Body saws, these are like planks on steroids. If you have no idea what they are, they'll be in the show notes. But this, when studied, is one of the most like core, how would I say this? They've done studies with electrodes where they try to see how much stimulation occurs in the abdomen when you do X, Y, or Z exercises, and body saws tend to generate the most stimulation. They are extremely taxing on the core, and I don't recommend them for people that are brand new to exercise. You're much better off starting with a plank, moving to plank step outs, moving to hand position movements, but doing the body saw against some sort of sliding surface with good form will absolutely max out your core muscles and their ability. I really love that exercise, and I try to incorporate that whenever clients, programs, and equipment allow. And then we get into extensions. These are going to be your back extensions, isometric holds in a back extension machine. We used to do these a lot in skiing because they allow isometric tension, so no contraction in either direction, eccentric or concentric, while still maintaining a muscular engagement. And you can do them for duration. So you can build this up over time. They're tough on the back, but they're not putting the back under any dangerous stress. It's just the body's own weight against itself. So they're a great way to build safe endurance in those low back muscles to help mitigate some of the pain that people tend to complain about. Whew. We are firing on all cylinders here. Time to talk about my core training regimen. Obviously, I incorporate a lot of the things that I just talked about. Hollow holds I've done since I was 15 years old. They're incredibly good. There's so many variations of them, and they were a big part of our trampoline and gymnastics training when I was a kid. But some of my favorite core exercises that I'm doing right now, and I do them in a circuit format because core work to me, although it's so valuable, is very boring. So I've had to find a way to compartmentalize it, make it fun, make it easy. So I set a timer. I do between 30 and 45 seconds per movement. I give a 15 to 20 second transition between movements, and I repeat for 3 to 5 rounds, depending on how much time I have and how much time I want to allot for my iron neck training. So big exercise here. Again, I'll include these in the show notes. So this will be under my current core training regimen. Copenhagen's, these are like side planks on crack. it would be a side plank with your top leg elevated, your arm on the floor, and you're pinning using your adductors, which are the muscles in between your legs from your groin down to your knee and beyond, to pin your legs close together. It's like a side plank that really demands adductor strength. And the reason that I choose this specifically is because your adductors give you the squeeze against your opponents when you're in guard retention, when you're in Kimura top position, you're trying to pin their body. Whenever you have that tight leg to leg engagement, that's your adductors at work, bringing your legs closer together. So anytime that you can mix that into your core strength, you're getting double the bang for your buck. Dragon flags, these are literally kind of a showboat exercise, but they are the result of building really useful core strength. I put an example on Instagram today, but essentially it's driving your feet straight up into the sky and slowly lowering against the weight of your own body. They feel very difficult. You can modify them by bending your knees, which you can do with most core exercises, hanging leg raises, and hanging ball leg raises. So these I will hang from a pull-up bar, squeeze a ball between my legs, again, utilizing that adductor engagement that's applicable to sport that I do, and then raise the legs above the waistline. You can do these for time. You can do these for reps. You can overload the weight and do them for less reps. There's plenty of different variations that you can do, but they're great for training your hip flexors, your rectus abdominis, your grip endurance, and proprioception, body control. Anytime that I can get a grip benefit while I'm doing core engagement exercises, it pays out big time for me because of the sports that I like to do. So if it's not something that you're interested in, if you don't rock climb, you don't do jiu-jitsu, you don't have any reason to use your grip strength, which you should have reason to use your grip strength because it's very valuable as a human to have strong grip, they're a great exercise to add in there. And then the next would be kettlebell drag throughs. This is a quadruped, meaning all fours position, 2 hands on the ground, both knees on the ground, both feet. You elevate your knees slightly, about 2 inches off the ground, and alternate, pulling a kettlebell through against the floor underneath your body. So what you're doing here is each time you reach for the kettlebell, you're taking away one of your contact points. When you remove a contact point, you decrease the stability, and you require more stability out of your trunk to maintain neutral hips and a flat back position. If you're unsure that you're doing this or not, place a tennis ball on your low back and do the exercise. That's true for planks or any position where you're on your hands and knees and you're doing a core movement. So quadruped rows, quadruped drag throughs, quadruped shoulder taps, anything where you take a limb away, a tennis ball will always give you really good feedback because it's going to respond to any shift that occurs at your low back. So it's low cost, high payout, and will really make the exercise perform exactly as you want. I really feel like I went through this an entire episode on one breath of air, which is leaving me a little bit lightheaded, but I hope that that's a power-packed episode about the core that you can take, utilize, implement into your training, and give you a little bit of purpose behind doing it. It's easy to know that you need to do core strengthening exercises. It's also easy to look them up, but it's difficult to know, 1, the right ones to do, and 2, how frequently to do them and why it matters. Many people think that they will build proficiency in the thing they do just by doing the thing they do. And although it's true to some degree, if you want to reduce the risk of injury and you want to increase performance, not maintain performance, you have to train your body specific to the sports that you like to do. You need to build stability in your core muscles, and you need to make sure that they are capable of stabilizing while you do other stuff. And if you don't think that this will be that important later in life, it 100% will, because slip and falls are the result of loss of balance and stability. So you want core strength at 22 as much as you want core strength at 76. It's something that will stick with you the rest of your life. It will teach you about your body and how to get proper engagement, how to brace against things when you're lifting them so that you can stay safe if you're helping a friend move, if you're lifting a box, if you're putting groceries in the cabinet. I can't tell you how many times I've heard from people that they threw their back out doing something as simple as changing a roll of toilet paper. Doesn't mean that I walk around bracing my core for every time I reach to something, but I don't have to because I know that the core strength is there from the regimen and consistency of doing the exercises. For those of you that have stuck around this far, I really cannot thank you enough. Each week tuning in, I can see the numbers. I can see the people paying attention to this stuff. I would assume that that means it's hitting home for some of you. If you ever have questions, reach out to me directly. Send me an email at abe@mainideapodcast.com. You can reach out to me directly on Instagram. If you ever have any questions, I'm here to help. I do these episodes because I want them to help people enact change in their fitness and their health. So if there's something that doesn't make sense or you're unsure, shoot me a message and I will do my best to respond immediately. Check out the website, www.mainideapodcast.com. You can join the mailing list there. You can become a member of the community. I will not blast your email account with spam. This will be only important things that are helping me impact my life that I hope will help impact yours. I hope that you have an incredible weekend, and do not miss next Tuesday's episode with Sean Supon, the CEO of Iron Neck, one of my favorite fitness products that I've ever purchased. I actually bought the thing myself, and I used it for a year before I reached out to them. So I stand by this thing 100%. Hearing Sean's story has been incredible. I know you're going to love that episode. Have a good one. Hey friends, Abe here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode and sticking around to the very end. If you want to support it, leave a 5-star review on Spotify or check out www.mainideapodcast.com, join the mailing list, and stay up to date on all things The Main Idea, from future guests, sponsorship opportunities, products that I'm using to help me perform at my best, invites to ask me anything, and any upcoming pertinent information to the show. I cannot do this show without you. It is literally why I show up each week and put these episodes together. So thank you from the bottom of my heart from being part of the community. I hope you have a great day.